Underground coal gasification. That is our first topic. Underground coal gasification. Now, this is an important topic because we are seeing many efforts by the government of India towards cleaner fuel technologies, renewable energy technologies, fuels which have less emissions. So in this context, it is very much important to know about underground coal gasification. This is one of the clean coal technologies. This is one of the clean coal technologies. Now, what is this underground coal gasification? As the name itself says, it is nothing but converting coal into gas, right? It's nothing but converting coal into gas, which can be used as fuel. However, the thing here is, we won't be disturbing the coal mines. We won't be mining the coal, right? We will leave the coal as it is in the underground and we'll try to convert that coal into gas. That is underground coal gasification, right? Without disturbing the mines, without mining the coal, in the underground itself, we'll try to convert the coal into gas. Now, what gases do we try to convert? The coal is converted into carbon dioxide, hydrogen, carbon monoxide, and methane, right? Carbon dioxide, hydrogen, carbon monoxide, and methane, right? These are the four different gases that are made out of this coal by this coal gasification. One more step depth into the topic. How is the gas made from the coal? Injection wells are used. Injection wells, that means different oxidants, that means different things are required for combustion, right? Converting coal into gas is nothing but making the oxidation reaction of the coal. When coal reacts with air and oxygen, it gets converted into the different oxides which we have discussed right now. So for that to happen, we need to pump oxygen and air. For that we use injection wells. So we send air and water through these injection wells. It reacts with the coal at high pressure and temperature. Gases are formed and these gases are extracted by using wells, right? Different wells. They are called production wells. So this is the overall process of underground coal gasification. Because this is important, because coal gasification based fertilizer plants were also being started in India, right? Coal gasification based fertilizer plants were also started in India. Just find out in which state and in which place we got the first coal gasification based fertilizer plant, right? Please find it out. So this is everything about underground coal gasification. What's called Global Nutrition Report, right? In the month of May, we have discussed about Global Nutrition Report. Who publishes this Global Nutrition Report? It is the World Health Organization which publishes the Global Nutrition Report. Now this is important because this is an area where we can get confused. Global Nutrition Report is published by World Health Organization, right? Global Food Security Report is published by Food and Agricultural Organization. And Global Hunger Index is published by IFPRI, International Food Policy Research Institute, right? So these three are nearby reports, confusing reports, right? So one is Global Nutrition Report, which is published by World Health Organization. The second one is Global Food Security Report, which is published by Food and Agricultural Organization, right? Recently it was published. And the third one is Global Hunger Index. This is published by IFPRI, International Food Policy Research Institute, right? So these are three different indexes published by three different agencies, right? This we have to know because last year they were asked about Global Competitiveness Report. In 2019 prelims, we have discussed it already. And Global Competitiveness Report is published by World Economic Forum. Right? So we need to be thorough with which report is published by which organizations, right? So this is one area where you have to focus. And another term which was there in the news, which is related to geography and also related to environment, is Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation, AMOC. AMOC, Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation. So if you would have gone through the current affairs, if you would have revised the current affairs or the magazines, you might have come across this term, right? We'll just revise what is this. Now we all know about ocean currents in geography, right? Right, ocean currents in geography, the circuit which they make. So one such circuit is Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation. This is nothing but the ocean currents circulation in the North Atlantic Ocean. The ocean currents circulation in the North Atlantic Ocean. What are the different ocean currents? You might have studied them in geography, right? North Atlantic Equatorial Current, Gulf Stream, right? North Atlantic Drift, right? And Canary Current. These are the four different ocean streams which make the circulation pattern. In between, we have the Sargasso Sea. I hope you're recollecting these guys in geography, right? So this ocean circulation, this pattern, right? North Atlantic Equatorial goes from east to west. And from there, it merges with the Gulf Stream. It goes up towards the poles. From there, because of the westerly winds, it gets drifted into North Atlantic Drift. Right? From there, the ocean current comes from poles towards the equator as Canary Current. So these are the different ocean currents in the North Atlantic Ocean. And this circulation is called Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation. So this is responsible for distributing heat and energy around the earth. Right? This is responsible for distributing heat and energy around the earth. Right? If they ask North Atlantic Ocean circulation, then everyone will answer. But if they mention this term, then it is difficult to answer, right? We should not have that difficulty. We should be knowing it. So this is one term which is very important. Please revise the ocean currents in the geography also. Warm current. Warm current stays above the surface of the water. Cold current sinks deep into the water, right? And water density and salinity, how are they involved? How are they related? If salinity is more, then the water will be dense. If salinity is less, then the water will be light, right? What is upwelling of cold water? Just revise all these things. And the next important factual question is academic Lomonosov, right? Just write it down. I'll tell the spelling. Academic, A-K-A-D-E-M-I-K, academic, A-K-A-D-E-M-I-K, academic space Lomonosov, L-O-M-O-N-O-S-O-V, Lomonosov, academic Lomonosov. Now what is this? This is the first floating nuclear plant in Russia, made by Russia, right? This is the first floating nuclear plant. So that's why it's important. It was in the news for 1 month, right? It was in the news for 1 month. I'm not sure of the month, right? But it is in 2020 and 2019 only. So it's very important for us. Academic Lomonosov. This is the first floating nuclear plant made by Russia, right? So this is one factual thing which we have to remember. And Rustom, R-U-S-T-O-M, Rustom. This is something which is made by DRDO, right? The DRDO, Defense Research Development Organization of India, has made a drone. It has made a drone indigenously. Its name is Rustom, R-U-S-T-O-M, Rustom, right? So Rustom is basically a unmanned aerial vehicle. Unmanned aerial vehicle means nothing but drone, right? So Rustom is an unmanned aerial vehicle or a drone manufactured indigenously by DRDO, Defense Research Development Organization, right? So this is being used for Army, Navy and Air Force also. At least we should remember Rustom means it is a drone made by DRDO indigenously, right? So this is how prelims preparation should be, guys. We need to be thorough with the facts, how much it is possible. And the next is Astra missile. Astra missile, Astra, ASTRA. Right? Why is this Astra missile important? This is the first BVRAM missile manufactured by India. BVRAM means Beyond Visual Range Air-to-Air Missile. This is a full form, guys. It's an abbreviation. BVRAM, BVRAM. Full form is Beyond Visual Range Air-to-Air Missile. Beyond Visual Range Air-to-Air Missile. I know it's difficult to remember all the missiles, but at least those missiles which made up in the news, we need to be thorough with them, right? It will be of some use for us in the prelims exam. So BVRAM, so Astra missile is the first BVRAM missile indigenously produced by India, right? So some specifications, if possible, we need to know. Its range is around 70 kilometers. Its range is around 70 kilometers. And this Astra missile is developed by Defense Research and Development Organization, DRDO, right? So this Astra missile is developed by DRDO indigenously, right? So Astra, what is it? It's a BVRAM. Why is it in the news? It is the first BVRAM. Who manufactured it? DRDO. How did they do it? Indigenously. These are some points we have to know, right? And its range is 70 kilometers. We have already discussed as a part of crash course about multi-layer missile system shield in the national capital region. So all the anti-missile systems in that multi-layer shield, we need to be thorough with, right? NASAMS is there, NASAMS 2 is there, Spike is there, Spike from Israel is there, S-400 from Russia is there, right? So all these missiles, some missiles made by India are also there in that multi-layer shield. So find out what is that multi-layer shield in the national capital region, right? So that is one area, guys, just focus. And Diamer Basha Dam. There is a dam called Diamer Basha Dam. Just find out on which river is this Diamer Basha Dam, right? This dam is being constructed by Pakistan and China together, right? In the disputed land between Pakistan and India. So this dam, they might ask it, right? Also refer to Indus Water Treaty Commission. What is this Indus Water Treaty? That is a treaty between India and Pakistan. Find out which rivers are under the control of Pakistan, which rivers are under the control of India, right? And different hydropower projects of India on the rivers, on the Indus rivers and its tributaries, right? So this, if you do it, it is useful for you guys. Next, one of the scheme is Matru Vandana Yojana, Pradhana Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana. Pradhana Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana. What is this? This is basically a conditional cash transfer, right? What is this? This is a conditional cash transfer to pregnant and lactating mothers. So the scheme's motto is conditional cash transfer to pregnant and lactating mothers. So basically they will be giving 5,000 rupees of cash assistance for pregnant and lactating mothers. That is the objective of this scheme, right? Pradhana Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana. Now, which ministry is implementing this scheme? Ministry of Women and Child Development is implementing this scheme, right? Ministry of Women and Child Development. As I've told you, any scheme you see, first thing is which is the implementing ministry. Second thing is what is its objective. Third, what are the specifications in it, right? So Women and Child Development Ministry is implementing. Overall objective is conditional cash transfer to pregnant and lactating mothers. Now we'll go to the specificities. Now, are all the pregnant and lactating mothers eligible for taking 5,000? No. All those pregnant and lactating women who belong to state government and central government jobs, who are having employment with central government and state government or public sector undertakings, they are not eligible for this scheme, right? If there is an option saying Matru Vandana Yojana gives 5,000 rupees of assistance to all the pregnant and lactating women, then that statement is wrong. Not all women. So this is first specificity. The second thing is how much money? It is 5,000 rupees, right? It is 5,000 rupees. And third specificity, this is a conditional cash transfer. This is a conditional cash transfer. That means not all poor women are given this. They need to meet some criteria. What are those criteria? First thing, they have to register their pregnancy, right? They have to register their pregnancy. Second thing, they need to do antenatal checkups. Antenatal means before the baby is born, right? When a particular woman is pregnant, then she has to undergo some medical checkups, right? That is called antenatal checkups. So that woman has to mandatorily undergo antenatal checkups, and also registration of the birth of the child. That also has to be done. Registration of birth of the child has to be done, and first cycle of immunization also, right? First cycle of vaccination also has to be done to the children. The new baby born, he has to be given the first cycle of vaccination also. So these are some conditions, right? If not, we remember all the conditions. At least we need to remember there are some conditions. Only when they satisfy those conditions, 5,000 rupees will be given to them. The third specificity in this is, this benefit is for first living child in the family, right? This benefit is for the first living child in the family. So these are some specifications related to Pradhana Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana. So this is Pradhana Mantri Matru Vandana Yojana. And the next topic is S&T topic, Parker Solar Probe. Parker Solar Probe, P-A-R-K-E-R, Parker Solar Probe. What is this Parker Solar Probe? This is an initiative of NASA. That is the first thing we have to know, right? Because they can say Parker Solar Probe is an initiative of European Union or NASA or GLOSNASS, which is an organization of Russia, right? Or BIDU, which is an organization of Japan, right? So in this way, they can ask us to, they can make us confused. So first thing is Parker Solar Probe. This is an initiative of NASA. Second, what is this? This Parker Solar Probe is the first spacecraft. It is the first spacecraft to study the corona part of the sun, right? Corona means not the corona which we have. This is the layer around the sun, right? Corona is the outermost layer of the sun. Study the outermost layer of the sun. First time spacecraft is being sent by NASA. Its name is Parker Solar Probe. The other name for Parker Solar Probe is Solar Probe Plus. The other name for Parker Solar Probe is Solar Probe Plus, right? So this is a robotic spacecraft that is being sent by NASA to study the outer corona of the sun, right? This should be clear. Now, why is corona so much important for us? It is important because an interesting trend can be seen in the atmosphere of the sun. Just like how Earth has different layers of atmosphere, similarly, sun also has different layers, right? Now, with common sense, we can say the inner part of the sun will be hotter than the outer part, right? But one mysterious thing that was observed with sun is corona, which is the outer part, is warmer and hotter than photosphere, which is the inner part, right? So outer part is hotter than the inner part of the sun. So that is why this Parker Solar Probe is being sent to study the corona, right? That is the first reason why they are sending it. Second reason is to estimate the space weather. Just imagine solar winds. You might have studied about solar winds in geography, right? When the Earth was evolving, we used to have a lot of gases of hydrogen and helium around the Earth. What happened then? Solar winds have swept away all the hydrogen and helium gases, and a fresh layer of atmosphere has been formed around the Earth, right? If you could recollect the geography, evolution of Earth. So solar winds are nothing but strong winds that come from the sun, right? Simply saying, solar winds are nothing but the strong winds that come from the sun. They are so strong that they can sweep away the atmosphere of various planets also. So now this is important for us because we have space infrastructure in the space, right? India has many satellites. India has communication satellites. India has imaging satellites, right? India has navigation satellites. India has defense intelligence satellites. India has monitoring satellites. All these satellites, they will be affected because of this solar winds, right? So that is a loss to our country. So to prevent that, to predict the space weather, this Parker Solar Probe is being sent by NASA, right? So every country has the same problem. So that's why NASA is sending this to study the outer corona of the sun, right? So these are all the points related to Parker Solar Probe. NASA's initiative studying the outer corona of the sun, right? Outer corona is hotter than the photosphere, that is the inner part of the sun, that we have to know. And to estimate the space weather, to predict the space weather, this is being sent, right? What is solar wind? These are all things we have to be knowing, guys. Right? This is Parker Solar Probe. The next thing is Aditya L1 mission. Aditya L1 mission. Now it's easy for us if we study Aditya L1 and Parker Solar Probe near. So Aditya L1 mission is India's first spacecraft mission to the sun, right? Aditya L1 mission is India's first solar mission. So this we have to know, first point. Second point, why is it being sent? To study the sun's outermost corona layer, right? To study the sun's outermost corona layer. So for the same purpose, India is sending Aditya L1 mission. But one difference is Parker Solar Probe is already sent. Aditya L1 mission is yet to be sent. This is one difference, right? Parker Solar Probe was sent last year itself. Aditya L1 mission is to be sent, yet to be sent, right? And another difference is position of the satellite. Parker Solar Probe is traveling to the surface of the sun, right? It is traveling to the surface of the sun. However, Aditya L1 mission is not traveling near to the sun. It is being located at a point called L1 point, Lagrange 1 point, L1 point. So position of the satellite is also different between Aditya L1 and Parker Solar Probe, right? This is also one thing which we have to note. Right? So these are some points related to Aditya L1 mission. So Aditya L1 mission, ISRO is launching it, India's initiative to study the outer corona layer of the sun. Why? Because of the solar winds, space weather prediction. And what is one difference? Parker Solar Probe is traveling near to the surface of the sun. However, Aditya L1 will be located at a point called L1, Lagrange 1 point, between the sun and the earth. Right? These are the differences. And this is India's first solar mission. Right? That's why it's important for us. And the next thing is Ek Bharat Shrestha Bharat scheme. Ek Bharat Shrestha Bharat scheme. You might have come across this phrase, right? So what is this Ek Bharat Shrestha Bharat scheme? This scheme's objective is to sensitize people about different cultures and promote unity and integrity. That is the overall objective of this Ek Bharat Shrestha Bharat scheme, right? What is the objective? To sensitize people about different cultures that exist in India. What happens because of this? As people are exposed to different cultures, they will develop sensitivity and respect towards those cultures, and this will promote unity and integrity of the nation, right? This will promote unity and integrity of the nation. People will be respecting the cultures. So this is the overall objective of Ek Bharat Shrestha Bharat. Now, which is the implementing ministry of this scheme? It is the Ministry of Human Resource and Development, MHRD. Yeah, its name will be changed in the coming days. So MHRD is the implementing ministry, right? So MHRD is implementing this scheme. What is the objective of the scheme? We have discussed. Now, second scheme is Imprint. Imprint India. What is Imprint? Impacting research, innovation and technology. Impacting research, innovation and technology. This is a full form. Imprint is the abbreviation. So Imprint means impacting research, innovation and technology. So Imprint India is also being implemented by MHRD, right? Imprint India is also being implemented by MHRD. Now, what is the objective of this imprint? Objective of this imprint is to develop a roadmap for research related to engineering and technology challenges in India, right? Developing a roadmap for research into engineering and technology challenges in India. This is Imprint India, right? Simply objective, what is the implementing ministry? Now, third scheme is Jigyasa. This is a Sanskrit term, J-I-G, Jig, Y-A-S-A, Jigyasa. Jigyasa means curiosity, guys, in English. So Jigyasa is also a scheme that is being initiated by CSIR, Council of Scientific and Industrial Research. Right? What is this Jigyasa scheme? Jigyasa scheme tries to establish a connection between school students and scientists. Right? Jigyasa's objective is to establish a connection between school students and scientists so that curiosity generates in the minds of the school going students, right? This is the objective of Jigyasa. It is a student scientist connect program, right? It is a student scientist connect program that is launched by CSIR, Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, right? This is Jigyasa. So these are three different schemes. Try to get more details about this scheme if you find anything. And anti-defection law is also was in the news, guys. To try to get all the details related to anti-defection law, right? 52nd constitutional amendment, which year? 1985, which schedule? 10th schedule, right? Make sure you're strong at all these things, right? And another constitutional amendment is also related to anti-defection, which made anti-defection more stronger. What is that constitutional amendment, right? What is the number of that constitutional amendment, right? Try to find that also. And some details in the anti-defection law. Who is the final authority to take the decision? It is the presiding officer of the house, right? It is the speaker of the Lok Sabha or the chairman of the Rajya Sabha. They are the final authorities to take the decision related to disqualification proceedings based on anti-defection law, right? Now, how is it done? Now the speaker will take a decision only when a member of the house keeps a petition that a particular MLA or MP has defected. This is important, right? The speaker will not suo moto take up the disqualification proceedings. Some member of the house has to raise a petition with the presiding officer. Member of the house has to raise a petition with the presiding officer. Only then the presiding officer will start the process. And presiding officer is the final authority. Is the presiding officer's verdict subjected to judicial review or out of judicial review? It is subjected to judicial review, right? It is subjected to judicial review. So these are some points which you have to be careful, guys. Olive Ridley turtles. So this year, olive Ridley turtles were also in the news, right? We have discussed this in detail in 30 minutes as a class, right? It is in the CSB YouTube channel. You can go and refer to the 30 minutes video of olive Ridley turtles, right? All the information is there. So animals and plants are important with respect to environment perspective, right? So olive Ridley turtles, where can we see them? In Odisha. They come there for nesting, right? They come there for laying their eggs, right? Aribada, this is a term related to olive Ridley turtles, right? What is Aribada? Mass nesting. We can see in the beaches of Odisha, in the Rushikulya beach of Odisha or the Gahirmata beach of Odisha, we can see hundreds of turtles coming together to lay eggs. You can see that wonderful picture in Google Images also, right? So that phenomenon is called Aribada, right? And where can we see this? In Odisha. In which places? Gahirmata beach and Rushikulya beach. Gahirmata beach and Rushikulya beach. What is the IUCN status of these turtles, olive Ridley turtles? What is the IUCN status? It is vulnerable, right? It is vulnerable. It is not endangered or critically endangered. It is vulnerable, right? That is one thing which we have to know. And why is this Gahirmata beach very important? That is the world's largest nesting site for this olive ridley turtles, right? So India has the world's largest nesting site for olive ridley turtles. We have covered all these points in that video, guys. Just see that video and you will be strong with olive ridley turtles, all the information, right? So Gahirmata Wildlife Sanctuary is also there. Gahirmata Wildlife Sanctuary, that is also for olive ridley turtles, right? Similarly, we have discussed Vikramashila Sanctuary. What is it about? Vikramashila Sanctuary. Vikramashila Sanctuary is for dolphins, right? It is for dolphins. Where is it located? It is located in Bihar. It is located in Bihar. Similarly, we have Chambal Sanctuary. Chambal Sanctuary. Where is the Chambal River? It flows across Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan and merges with the Yamuna, right? So Chambal Sanctuary also has some important animals. One is the Gangetic dolphin, right? Gangetic dolphin is there. And the second thing is gharials are there. Gharials are there in the Chambal River, right? So these two are protected in Chambal Sanctuary. These two are protected in Chambal Sanctuary. What is the IUCN status of gharial? Critically endangered, right? IUCN status of gharial is nothing but one form of crocodile, guys. So gharial is nothing but its IUCN status is critically endangered. What is the IUCN status of Gangetic dolphin? Endangered. What is the IUCN status of one-horned rhinoceros? Vulnerable. What is the IUCN status of Bengal tiger? Endangered, right? So in this way, you need to revise all the animals and their IUCN status, right? So that will be easy and useful for us only. So National Chambal Sanctuary, you can see gharials there, critically endangered, and Gangetic dolphins which are endangered. Gahirmata Wildlife Sanctuary, what you can see there, olive ridley turtles. It is the world's largest nesting site for olive ridley turtles. So this is about environment, guys. And yeah, and there is another term called Repeal the Eighth and Save the Eighth campaign, right? There was a campaign called Repeal the Eighth and Save the Eighth. What is this Repeal the Eighth and Save the Eighth? So if you would have observed, around 1.5 or 2 months back, we had a movement in Ireland about abortion rights, right? So there was a movement in Ireland about abortion rights. So this movement is related to that, guys. So what happened is people have made a referendum. People have passed a referendum asking the Ireland government to repeal the 8th amendment to the Ireland's constitution. Why did people ask to repeal the 8th amendment to Ireland constitution? So that Ireland government can allow a legislation for abortion, right? So that Ireland government can allow a legislation for abortion. So simply you have to remember repeal the 8th and save the 8th. This is related to a movement and a referendum in Ireland, which is related to legislation about abortion, right? This is related to women's rights, guys. So that's why we have to know. And this was a big movement. Just Google it also. You can get some extra information, right? So these kind of questions can end up in the exam. They can simply say repeal the 8th movement recently seen in the news related to, right? So we should be in a position to say, okay, it's related to Ireland. If we just broadly remember that it is somewhat related to abortion or Ireland, we can get the option. Price Stabilization Fund Scheme. Price Stabilization Fund Scheme. What is this Price Stabilization Fund Scheme? Now, one of the problem in India is onions, potatoes, tomatoes, right? These horticulture crops prices, they fluctuate more in India. In one particular season, we see onions for 1 rupee, 2 rupee for kg, right? So in that position, we see the prices of onions. Sometimes we see the prices of onions skyrocketing. They are increasing like anything. right? So this fluctuation in horticulture crops like onion, potato and tomato is happening because of lack of proper storage and lack of marketing facilities, right? Lack of proper cold storages. The farmers are forced to sell these crops, right? So because of which prices are fluctuating. We have seen this recently also. So that's why this scheme is important for us, guys, because we have seen onion prices fluctuating, right, in the previous months. So which is the implementing ministry of this price stabilization fund scheme? It is the Consumer Affairs Ministry. It is the Consumer Affairs Ministry, not the Agricultural Ministry. Not the Agricultural Ministry, it is the Consumer Affairs Ministry, which is the implementing ministry for price stabilization fund scheme. What is the objective? The objective is to stabilize the prices of onion, tomato and potato. Stabilize the prices of horticulture crops like onion, potato and tomato, right? So this is the objective. Implementing ministry is Consumer Affairs Ministry, right? We have discussed this. So this is in brief about price stabilization fund scheme, right? So at least a broad objective we need to have, guys, and for further details you can Google it, right? So this is something basic which we need to know with respect to prelims preparation. And shell companies, as everyone knows, what is the definition of shell company? Shell company is one such company which exists but no significant business activity takes place in those companies, right? Now here one tricky thing is, I have seen in one of the test series, there was an option saying all the shell companies are illegal. All the shell companies are illegal. Now is it a correct statement or a wrong statement? It is a wrong statement, right? A shell company need not be illegal all the time, right? A business company for various reasons may not have significant activity, right? So all shell companies are not illegal companies. That is one thing which you have to know, right? All shell companies are not illegal companies. However, some of the shell companies are used for illegal activities like money laundering and tax evasion, right? Some of the shell companies are used for money laundering and tax evasion. And other name for shell companies is ghost companies. Other name for shell companies is ghost companies. So if you see a word called ghost companies, don't panic. It's nothing but the shell companies only, right? And IMF report called Fiscal Monitor Report. Fiscal Monitor Report. This is published by IMF, right? Reports are important. So Fiscal Monitor Report. This is published by IMF, International Monetary Fund. Apart from Fiscal Monitor Report, the other reports that are published by IMF are World Economic Outlook. World Economic Outlook, that is also published by IMF. And Global Financial Stability Report. Global Financial Stability Report, that is also published by IMF. In the similar way, World Bank also publishes 2 to 3 reports. Find about them, right? Also, United Nations Trade and Development, there is an organization called UNCTAD, UNCTAD, right? UNCTAD, that also publishes some reports. Find about that. World Economic Forum, World Economic Forum also publishes reports. Find what are those reports, right? So all these are important reports, guys, because these are important organizations. Various organizations publish reports. At least we have to be thorough with these big organization reports. So Fiscal Monitor Report is published by IMF. Apart from that, World Economic Outlook and Global Financial Stability Report. In India also, an organization publishes Financial Stability Report. Which is that organization? It is RBI. So in India, Financial Stability Report is published by RBI. At the global level, Financial Stability Report is published by IMF. And these are some facts, guys. And the next topic is public debt. Public debt. What is public debt? What are other liabilities? There are 2 types of debts for government. One is public debt, the other thing is other liabilities. These two terms we need to have clarity. What is public debt? Public debt includes the following things. They are market loans. That means if government has taken any loans from the market, right? So that comes under public debt. Second thing is treasury bills. Treasury bills. Treasury bills also come under public debt. What is treasury bill? Just Google it, guys. I hope you guys know it. If not, it is in the Ramesh Singh also. You can refer to what is treasury bills. So treasury bills is also a part of public debt, and special loans and securities released by Reserve Bank of India, the government securities, right? We have discussed in detail what are the government securities. G-Secs. G-Secs are also a part of public debt. So all those money which the government borrowed either from an individual or from a market or from an organization, or even to that matter from the foreign sources, right? All these are a part of public debt. So foreign borrowings are also a part of public debt. If government has taken say $100 billion from World Bank as a loan, then that is also a part of public debt. So these are all the components of public debt. Now, what are other liabilities? Other liabilities means other than what we have discussed now, those will be there in other liabilities. Say, National Savings Scheme. There is a scheme called National Savings Scheme, right? In that National Savings Scheme, what is done? People can save their money with the government in the post offices, right? They can open accounts in post office and they can save their money, right? And also the government comes up with Provident Fund scheme. We can see all the employees contributing to Provident Fund, right? PPF accounts, Public Provident Fund schemes. What are these? People are giving money to the government. Government will be giving back that money to the people with some extra money, right? So this is like people investing in the government schemes. People investing in the government schemes. These don't come under the public debt, right? These don't come under the public debt because here the government is not borrowing the money from people. The government is acting like a bank. The government is acting like a bank for the people, right? So Provident Fund scheme, savings scheme, pension scheme, right? Atal Pension Yojana, all these, what are these schemes? These schemes are being implemented by the government as a banker to the people. So these come under other liabilities, right? These are not borrowings. So here we have to be careful, right? If there is any question saying saving schemes also come under public debt, then it is wrong, right? In public debt, what all come? Loans, G-Secs, right? All that stuff will come. External debt, all these come under public debt. Other liabilities means saving schemes, pension schemes, right? All these come under Provident Fund schemes. All these come under other liabilities. This also you have to be careful. And the next topic is participatory notes, P notes, participatory notes. This was already asked in the last year prelims, guys, participatory notes. So that was asked in that year because SEBI, Security Exchange Board of India, was bringing many reforms. It was trying to bring some reforms related to participatory notes. So we need to know what are these participatory notes. So P notes means, just imagine how we invest in shares. We have money, we'll register with SEBI and we'll invest in the shares, right? So there are two types of investors, FDI, FII. What is FII? Foreign institutional investors. They are also called FPI, foreign portfolio investors. Who are these foreign portfolio investors? They are belonging to foreign countries, foreign nationals, yet they want to invest in our share market, right? They are called foreign portfolio investors. Now assume I am a foreigner, right? But I don't want to invest directly in Indian market. What will I do? I will go to this foreign portfolio investors who are already investing, who are registered with SEBI. I will go to them, I will give them money and ask them to invest. So I will not directly register with the SEBI. I will not directly register with the Security Exchange and Board of India. I will take the help of an investor who is already registered with SEBI. Right? So this is called participatory note. Assume I gave 1 lakh rupees to a foreign portfolio investor, asking him to invest in some shares. Then the foreign portfolio investor will give me a P note. That is like a note saying this person gave me so and so money to invest in some shares. I will give back I will return the money to him at a later point of time, right? So this is participatory notes, guys. So this is used by foreign nationals to indirectly invest in Indian shares, right? This is used by foreign investors to indirectly invest in Indian shares, right? They will invest through foreign portfolio investors. They will not directly register with the SEBI, Security Exchange and Board of India. Now, some features related to P notes are: does this P note holder have any ownership on the share? No, he doesn't have any ownership on the share because he did not directly invest in the share. So he does not have any ownership on the share. Second point, does he have any voting rights on the share? Or does he have any voting rights on the share of that company? No, because he is not registered with SEBI. He did not directly invest it. He invested it via a FPI, a foreign portfolio investor. So that foreign portfolio investor will be having the ownership, not this P note holder. Not this P note holder. So these are some basic things about participatory notes. Right? So this was asked in 2019, guys. And the next topic is venture capital fund. Venture capital fund. What is this venture capital fund? So you might have studied about angel investors, angel investment, right? Angel tax. So this was in the news in the year 2019, right? In the recent budget also, angel tax exemption was given to startups. So this is related to startups. If you are not aware of this, please go to the budget speech and refer to it, right? So this is an important topic because government is focusing so much on startups. We have many schemes on startups also. So what is venture capital? Just imagine what is needed to start a startup. First thing is investment. We need money, right? So for that money, the entrepreneur who is planning to start a startup, he will go to different investors. Now, those investors who give the money, seeing the growth potential of a startup, that is called venture capital fund, right? Venture capital fund means those investors investing the money in a startup based on the growth potential of that startup, right? Based on the growth potential of that startup. Then that kind of fund is called venture capital fund. Now you might get a doubt. Angel investment is also an investment which is given for the startups at the initial stage. However, a difference between venture capital and angel investment is venture capital is professional fund management. Professionals will be investing. They will be coming, they will be assessing the startup, they will be seeing the growth potential of the startup, and then they will take the decision. Angel investor means he is somewhat nearby to us. He might be our friend, right? He might be a businessman whom we know, right? They won't be seeing the investment in a professional basis. They are called angel investors, right? So venture capital is different from angel investors. For further differences, please refer Google, guys, right? So this is about venture capital, a broad definition we need to know. And there is a slight difference between venture capital and angel investment. I hope that is clear for everyone. And different types of unemployment. This is also important. Simple definitions we need to know. What are the different types of unemployment? Seasonal unemployment is the first thing. Seasonal unemployment. Structural unemployment. Structural unemployment. Frictional unemployment, right? Frictional unemployment, technological unemployment, under unemployment, under unemployment, and disguised unemployment. Disguised unemployment, right? Seasonal unemployment means, best example is a farmer, right? In the cropping seasons, he will be having work. And after the cropping season, he will be left with no job, right? That is called seasonal unemployment. What is structural unemployment? For structural unemployment, a simple example is artificial intelligence. Now, what we are talking, if we get artificial intelligence into the economy, there will be job losses. Why there will be job losses? Because the present people don't have the skills to adapt themselves to artificial intelligence related jobs, right? So this is structural unemployment. When something new comes which changes the structure of the economy, then the unemployment which results is called structural unemployment. Best example is job losses because of artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is something which is coming new to the economy, structurally changing the economy. So that is structural unemployment. Frictional unemployment. Frictional unemployment means, a best example is, let's assume a particular person is doing a job. Now he has quit his job and is preparing for UPSC to get a government job. Then how many years is he preparing? Say after 2 years he got the government job. Then those 2 years he is under the phase of frictional unemployment, right? So frictional unemployment means unemployment between two levels of jobs, right? Between one job and the other job, a gap will be there in which an individual will be unemployed. That is called frictional unemployment. Best example is a UPSC preparation, UPSC aspirants, right? Those who have quit their jobs and are trying for government job. So now they are frictionally unemployed, right? And the next thing is disguised unemployment. Disguised unemployment. Disguised unemployment means, this also we can see in agriculture. Let's assume there is 1 acre of land. In 1 acre of land, 10 people are enough to do the work, right? 10 people are enough to do the work, but 50 people are doing work in the same field. That is disguised unemployment, right? Marginal productivity is 0. Marginal productivity is 0. That is called disguised unemployment. So the simple definitions we should be knowing: what is structural unemployment, what is frictional unemployment, right? What is and also there is another unemployment called cyclical unemployment. Cyclical unemployment. Now this cyclical unemployment comes because of the business cycle, right? Business cycle is never a constant line. Business cycle will be like a sine curve, right? There will be ups and downs in the business cycle, in the economic activity, right? There will be boom, sometimes there will be recession. So unemployment because of recession or because of economic slowdown, that is called cyclical unemployment. So all these terms you need to have at least a broad idea: what is structural, what is frictional, what is cyclical, what is disguised, what is seasonal, right? So I hope everyone is clear with this. And what are the different ways of measuring unemployment? There are 3 ways of measuring unemployment in India. First is usual status approach. First is usual status approach. This is one way which is used to measure the unemployment in India. Usual status approach. Second thing is daily status approach. Second is daily status approach. Third is weekly status approach. Weekly status approach. So these 3 approaches are used for measuring unemployment. So if there is a question saying usual status approach used for, then that is used for measuring the unemployment, because these kind of questions we have seen. Service area approach is used in, this was the question in 2019 prelims, right? They've asked service area approach is used for lead bank scheme. Is used for lead bank scheme. Lead bank scheme is a financial inclusion scheme. We have already discussed this in 2019 prelims paper when we were discussing, right? So usual status approach is for unemployment measurement, right? So these are some topics, guys. We'll continue with other economics topics tomorrow. And if you see today's newspaper, there were some interesting topics. First thing is Swachh Sarvekshan. Swachh Sarvekshan rankings, right? 3 cities from Andhra have ended up in the top 10 in the Swachh Sarvekshan. So who conducts this Swachh Sarvekshan? Just find out. What are the different parameters on which these rankings are given? Find out that also. Which is the city that was ranked first? Find out that also, right? So any ranking or index, we need to analyze it in this way, guys. So some basic information we need to remember. The second thing is contempt. So contempt powers, that is in the news like anything from many days. So try to find out the difference between criminal contempt and civil contempt, right? Try to find out the difference between criminal contempt and civil contempt. So on a particular person now, charges are being done. Now on what? Is it a criminal contempt or a civil contempt? It is a criminal contempt. It's not a civil contempt, right? And where are these contempt powers mentioned? These contempt powers are mentioned in a separate act that was passed by the parliament. That also you have to know. Constitution does not give in detail the contempt powers of the judiciary, right? The parliament has passed a separate act for it. However, Constitution mentions about contempt powers, right? Mentioning is different, giving it in detail is different. The Constitution mentions about contempt power. That means it tells Supreme Court, High Court, they have the contempt powers. That's what Constitution says. But what are those contempt powers is given by a separate act of the parliament, right? This clarity we need to have. And what is the difference between criminal contempt and civil contempt? That also we have to know, right? If any judges are defamed or any some charges, or if some judges are illegally defamed, defamation is done on judges, then it is criminal contempt. Let's say if Supreme Court gave an order and we are not passing that order, or we are not following that order, then it is civil contempt. This is basic difference, but try to get more details. What is criminal contempt and what is civil contempt, right? And National Recruiting Agency. I've asked you to read about it yesterday. So that is one area where we can expect a question. So National Recruiting Agency is only for non-gazetted posts. These details we have to know with respect to prelims, right? Not gazetted posts, right? Not for gazetted posts. It's only for non-gazetted posts, right? And as of now, for Railway Recruitment Board, Staff Selection Commission, and another one, what was that? Yeah, Institute of Banking Personnel, right? For banking, Staff Commission, and Railway Recruitment Board. What these three, NRA is conducting. Still try to get more details about this NRA, right? It's working under which ministry? Try to get all those details also. And there was a very good article in the editorial about nativism, right? Nativism is not a solution for unemployment. We can see many states coming up with reservation for locals in the local jobs, right, within the state. So try to read about that article also. It is useful for mains and also for prelims. Plasma donation, convalescent plasma therapy, This is related to COVID. What is done in that therapy? What is plasma donation? How is it useful to cure COVID? Try to get each and every detail of COVID, guys, right? There can be a question or there cannot be a question also. So we need to be prepared. If there is any question, we have to answer it. And there is an initiative by Kerala state government called Namath Basai. In today's Hindu newspaper, you can see this. Namath Basai. What is this Namath Basai? This is an initiative by Kerala government to teach the tribal children in their own indigenous languages. This is an initiative by Kerala state government to teach the tribal children in their own local languages. What is the benefit of this? Then the tribal children will also accept this education. It will not be alien for them, right? They will continue the schooling. Dropouts will be less. So this is a very good initiative. So this initiative was done by Kerala state government. For more details, you can refer today's Hindu newspaper. It's there in today's paper, right? Namath Basai. Right? The names are important for prelims. And Sputnik 5. Sputnik 5. S-P-U-T-N-I-K 5. Sputnik 5. What is the Sputnik 5? This is Russia's first COVID vaccine. Right? This is Russia's first COVID vaccine. Sputnik 5. Right? The names we have to know because the Sputnik sounds like a missile. So if they give a question saying Sputnik 5, that is a missile, then that's wrong. It's a COVID vaccine.